Hello, Boccaccio's Decameron. First day, the conclusion. Already, the stories have all been read. Already the sun was dipping towards the west, and the heat of the day had largely abated when the stories told by the 7 young ladies and 3 young men were found to be at an end. Accordingly, their queen addressed them in gracious tones, as follows. For the present day, dear friends, my reign is complete, except for giving you another queen, who shall decide for herself how her time and ours should be spent in seemly pleasures of the morrow. And albeit some little time still appears to be left until nightfall, I believe this to be the most suitable hour at which to begin all the days that ensue, since preparations can thus be made for whatever the new queen considers appropriate with regard to the following day. For we are unlikely to make proper provision for the future unless some thought is devoted beforehand to the matter, and therefore, with due reverence to the one who gives life to all things, and with an eye to our common good, I decree that on this coming day the queen who will govern our realm shall be Philomena, a young lady of excellent judgment. Having spoken these words, she rose to her feet and removed her laurel garland, which she reverently placed upon Philomena, after which, first she herself, then all the other maidens, and the young men too, hailed Philomena as their queen and pledged themselves with good grace to her sovereignty. Philomena blushed a little for modesty on finding that she had been crowned as their queen. She recalled the words so recently uttered by Pampanea, and not wishing to appear obtuse, she plucked up courage, and first of all she confirmed the appointments made by Pampanea, and gave instructions as to what should be done for the following morning, as well as for supper that evening, due account being taken of the place in which they were staying. Then she began to address the company as follows. Dearest companions, albeit Pampanea, more out of kindness of heart than for any merit of my own, has made me your queen, I do not intend, in shaping the matter in which we should comport ourselves, merely to follow my personal judgment, but rather blend my judgment with yours, in order that you may know what I have in mind, and thus be at liberty to suggest additions or curtailments to my program. I propose to expound it to you briefly. Unless I am mistaken, I would say that the formalities observed today by Pampanea were both laudable and pleasing. And so, until such time as we should find them wearisome, whether through constant repetition or for some other reason, I consider they ought to remain unaltered. Having thus confirmed the procedure for the activities upon which we have now embarked, we can rise from this place and go off in search of our amusement. And when the sun is about to set, we shall sup out of doors, and then we shall have a few songs and other entertainments, after which it will be time to go to bed. Tomorrow morning we shall rise early, whilst it is yet cool, and once more we shall go off somewhere and engage in whatever pastime each of us may prefer. In due course we shall return, as we did today, in order to breakfast together. We shall then dance for a while, and when we have risen from our siesta, we shall return and resume our storytelling, from which I consider that a great deal of pleasure and profit is derived. So, we have these people who are sheltering from a disease, in this case the bubonic plague. But as anybody who is sheltering from a disease knows, entertainment is darn important, or you will go nuts. So, they are going to do a lot to entertain themselves. I do, however, wish to initiate a practice which Pampanea, because she was elected late as our queen, was unable to introduce, namely to restrict the matter of our storytelling within some fixed limit, which will be defined for you in advance, so that each of us will have time to prepare a good story on the subject prescribed. Ever since the world began, men have been subject to various tricks of fortune, and it will ever be thus until the end. Let each of us then, if you have no objection, make it our purpose to take as our theme those who, after suffering a series of misfortunes, are brought to a state of unexpected happiness. This rule was commended by all the company, gentlemen and ladies alike, and they agreed to be bound by it. But Dioneo said, when the rest had finished talking, now remember, Dioneo plays by his own rules. My lady, like all the others, I too say that the rule you have given us is highly attractive and laudable. But I would ask you to grant me a special privilege, which I wish to have conferred upon me for as long as our company shall last, namely, that whenever I feel so inclined, I may be exempted from this law, obliging us to conform to the subject agreed, and tell whatever story I please. But so that none shall think I desire this favor because I have a poor supply of stories, I will say at once that I am willing always to be the last person to speak. Now, Dioneo, he plays by his own rules. The three men represent various aspects of man. Dioneo represents lust. Dioneo as in Dionysus. So, you can bet that he's going to always have a lusty story. And since he's always the last one to tell the story, you could have a pretty interesting reading of the Decameron where you just skip through and read the last story from every day. It would save you a lot of reading. But let's just go on. And hopefully the dog will remain quiet. The queen, knowing what a jovial and entertaining fellow he was, and clearly perceiving that he was only asking for this favor so that, if the company should grow weary of hearing people talk, he could enliven the proceedings with some story that would move them to laughter, cheerfully granted his request, having first obtained the consent of the others. She then stood up, and they all sauntered off towards a stream of crystal-clear water, which descended the side of a hill and flowed through the shade of a thickly wooded valley, its banks lined with smooth round stones and verdant grasses. On reaching the stream, they stepped barefoot and with naked arms into the water and began to engage in various games with each other. But when it was nearly time for supper, they made their way back to the house, and there they supped merrily together. After supper, instruments were sent for, and the queen decreed that a dance should begin, which Loretta was to lead, while Emilia was to sing a song, accompanied on the lute by Dioneo. No sooner did she hear the queen's command than Loretta promptly began to dance, and she was joined by the others, whilst Emilia sang the following song in amorous tones. In mine own beauty take I such delight, that to no other love I could my fond affections plight, since in my looking glass each hour I spy beauty enough to satisfy the mind. Why seek out pastimes delights, or new ones try, when all content within my glass I find? What other sight so pleasing to mine eyes is there that I might see, which further I could prize? My sweet reflection never fades away, my consolation ever is to see it every day. It lies beyond the tongue's expressing, to celebrate a joy so fine. None understand this bliss who has not burned with a delight like mine. The longer I reflect upon those same eyes that stare from mine own face back to me, the fiercer burns the flame. I yield it all, my heart it renders back. All that I gave, I taste the bliss. It promises me, and hope yet more to have. Ah, who has loved like this? Now, remember, this is going to be translated from Italian, and not even from modern Italian. So, hard to maintain the rhyme and the meaning and the verse all at the same time. So, albeit the words of this little song caused not a few to ponder its meaning, they all joined cheerfully in the chorus. When it was over, they danced and sang for some other short pieces, and then, as the night was short and much of it already spent, the queen was pleased to bring the first day to an end. Having called for torches to be lit, she ordered her companions to retire to rest till the following morning. And this command, returning to their several rooms, they duly obeyed. Here ends the first day of the Decameron. Now, the whole course of the Decameron is supposed to take place in 10 days. I have spent more than 10 weeks just getting through the first day. And since I do not expect to be, that we're going to be sheltering from the coronavirus for 2 years, I certainly hope not, I'm going to skip around. So I will, skip around. It's a thick book. I will skip around to some of the more interesting or significant stories of the Decameron. So to my viewers, both of you, I'm just letting you know it's not going to be just, one after another after another. Now, God knows, if we are sheltering for 2 years, I will eventually get through them all, but I'm going to skip around to some of the more interesting stories. And anyway, there you are. I hope you've enjoyed this, and have a nice day. Let's see if I can figure out how to turn off the camera. Boo!